Okay, perfect. Well, welcome to a workshop today on the power of journaling and storytelling. I'm sure that people are going to be joining over the next couple of minutes, so I will start by introducing myself and a little bit about what we're going to do today. And if you come in, feel free to join in, and we're going to kind of go over it all again. My name is Courtney Knowles, and I am co-founder of the Love is Louder project, which is part of the Jed Foundation. And the Jed Foundation is a national nonprofit that's really focused on strengthening our emotional health, so that we feel better, that we're more resilient, and preventing some of the things that can happen when we aren't taking care of our mental health, or when we're experiencing mental health conditions like depression, ranging from substance abuse to, thoughts of suicide. So Jed has a lot of different programs, and Love is Louder specifically is really an online movement. You can find us, and we'll repeat this at the end, at Love is Louder on Instagram and Twitter, or loveislouder.org. We're really about finding ways that we can feel more connected, and the really simple things that we can do to make ourselves feel better and protect our mental health. And I feel like right now, as we're all kind of staying in, and we're in a time of uncertainty, those little things that we can do, or those little things that we can control that have been proven to support our mental health, are just so powerful. And so the one we're going to dive into today is journaling and telling our own stories. And we're primarily going to talk about how we do that for ourselves, and how we can incorporate that into our routine, and what research and science — I know that kind of sounds boring, but it's actually kind of amazing what research has shown. These little things that we can do in our routine, what a huge impact they can have, not only on our mental health, but also on our physical health and our immune system, and things that are super important right now. So we're going to dive in a little bit into that. We're going to have a couple different points during today's workshop or talk or conversation where you can ask questions. So if you do have questions, feel free to submit them, and we'll try to answer those at the end. But there'll also be a couple points where I stop and say, does anybody have any questions, where we are at this point. So let's kind of dive in first just to what I'm talking about when I say journaling, because I think that there's a lot of different ways to do it, and people think of it as different things. And some people think of it as like a diary where you kind of write a story about what you're going through, and other people see it more as an emotional health tool where you're writing down how you're feeling. And really, journaling is whatever you need it to be. The kind of journaling we're talking about today, the kind of journaling that science and experience has told us can make us feel better, can help us deal with our feelings, can improve our mental health. There's even been some research that shows that, like I said, it can improve our physical health and how we deal with stress. What's really important is that you find the way of journaling that works for you, and you try to incorporate it into your routine every day. And I'll repeat this throughout. Incorporating something in your routine does not mean you have to do it the same exact way every day. It doesn't mean we're going to have the same energy, especially right now. I don't know about you, but there are some days when I wake up in this kind of quarantine, weird world we're in, and I am really able to focus and get things done. And then there are other days when it's just hard. And so I think it's realizing what's important is that you do it in some way each day, but it might be different from day to day, depending on how you feel. And there's lots of aspects to journaling. I wish you were kind of all, I could see you all, so I could have people raise their hands and say, how many of you already incorporate journaling into what you do. But there's lots of different kinds, and you can make it what you need it to be. Today, we're going to talk about some really specific journaling exercises. It's kind of a routine that I use. It's a routine that has been kind of shown to help with some of the things I talked about. But know that this is just a template. This is just a starting point for you. I'm going to kind of walk through some of the concepts and what the routine is, and then we're actually going to take a minute to actually do a journal entry together. And I'm going to use some of my personal experiences and what's been in my journal for the last couple of days as an example of what I'm talking about. So if you don't have a journal or a notebook, I should probably explain why I'm wearing a Harry Potter onesie at this point. One of the things that we're really emphasizing with Love is Louder and our action center at loveislouder.org is that regardless of kind of what you're dealing with right now, whether you're working from home and that's hectic, or you're taking care of family and that's hectic, or you're uncertain about your work right now and that's stressful, we're really encouraging people to find ways to interject things that make them calm, kindness, ways to stay active every day. And just like I said with the journaling, that might look different some days than others. But at the very beginning of this, when I was kind of stressed out, my commitment was every day I'm going to put on a onesie and go on a walk. And I call it a onesie walk, just to kind of remain playful, to be active. And what I found was it made my neighbors, who are all staying 6 feet away, of course, really happy, and it gave me a break. Stuck now with like day 50 something wearing the onesie. So I chose my journal that looks like it goes very well with my Harry Potter outfit here, but you can use a notebook. You can write with whatever is most comfortable. I really like a pencil. The one thing I will say, and when I get asked this question a lot when we're doing journaling workshops in real world settings, can't you just use your phone? Can't I just type it on my computer? And the answer is yes, you can, if that's the way that works best for you and that's the way that incorporates into your routine. There is research that shows that we absorb and retain and process things differently when we write them down by hand than when we type them in. And because the journaling process is something that you want to be personal and you want to be able to take something away from, and it's really a way to kind of cement both the things that you felt, what you went through, and what you learned, my recommendation is to use an old-fashioned pen and paper or pencil and paper. But if the only way that you can stick with it and do it is doing it digitally, then by all means do that, because what's most important is that you incorporate it into your routine. Now, before I walk through the routine that we're going to kind of suggest that you do and that you can customize, I'm going to say a couple of things that journaling does not have to be. Because a lot of times when we hear about diaries and journaling, it is in movies and TV shows where a narrator's reading their journal and, saying things like, let me take you back to the beginning, and giving all this exposition. A journal is for you. A journal, if you're feeling pressure when you're writing in your journal to get everything right, to get the sentence structure right, to make sure if part of your mind's like writing it like you would an assignment for school or work, that's really not necessary, because the type of journaling that we're starting with today is really for you. And so make it relaxed. The only thing that's important is that you can understand what's there. So don't feel the pressure at the end of a long, stressful day to write this whole narrative of the long, stressful day that you've went through. Just capture what's important. And I think that's an important key takeaway, because I know a lot of people I've talked to will quit journaling because it's just too stressful. And usually when you dig into why it's stressful, it's because you're putting more effort into it than you need to if it's really just a tool for yourself. The other thing that people sometimes slide into when they're journaling is actually starting to think about what you're going to write in your journal, or how you're going to, while you're experiencing something, while you're hanging out or doing an activity or having an emotional conversation with your friend, thinking in your head about how you're going to capture it in your journal. And we know for some research on social media that this kind of thing can actually take away from the experiences we're having. And I'll give you an example. There's some data that shows if you're out doing something, or now at home doing something, and you're taking pictures, just casually taking pictures in real time, and then later in the day, you pull those pictures up and you think about how you're going to post them on your social media, that can actually increase the happiness and the positive benefits you get out of that experience, because you experienced it once, and now you're really getting to kind of relive it and share it with others. However, the research showed that if while you're experiencing it, you're thinking, oh, what picture am I going to put on social media? What caption am I going to use? Or, I'm going to edit this picture right now. If you're doing all that, if you're thinking too much about how you're going to capture and share a memory while it's happening, you actually take away from that experience. You aren't as present. You're not taking as much happiness. So the way that can translate to journaling is it's great if thinking about your journaling and being excited about or looking forward to doing your journaling exercise at the end of the day becomes part of your routine. Just try not to like focus on that in the moment when you're experiencing whatever you're experiencing. If there's a quote you run across, oh, I want to put this in my journal, jot it down, but just don't feel like it's not an assignment. So you don't need to be thinking throughout the day about what you're going to include in your journal. And that's why when we kind of walk through this exercise, one of the things that we do before we even start writing in our journal is taking a moment to kind of sit still and lean into our feelings. So I'm now going to kind of walk through this very kind of simple process for journaling that we're going to go through today, but just keep in mind that you can customize it. People use their journals to capture ideas for things they want to create or write. People use their journals to remember that a friend did something nice for you and you want to, capture somewhere what they did so that you can thank them or do something nice in return. All of those are great kind of additions to the journaling experience. So don't think what we're walking through today is the beginning and the end. It's just kind of a template or a starting point based on what we know can help us. So the first part of this, and we're going to do this together, is really just kind of taking a moment before you start writing in your journal. And I like to do it at the end of the day. I've heard a lot of people like to do it then. If that doesn't work for you, you can obviously adjust that. But I think it's a good time to do it. And before you write in your journal, just kind of sit with your feelings or think about the feelings from that day. And I'm going to give you an example of kind of how that works in a lot of our lives. I'm sure that you've had, I'll just use a personal experience of mine. Actually, just a couple of days ago, I was doing a lot of different live streams and calls and meetings that had to do with kind of the COVID crisis and us all staying at home. And so I was like, from one thing to another, there was a lot of anxiety, but there were also things coming up between the meetings. There was some family stuff that was happening that I didn't really have time to process. So all these things were coming at me all day, and I didn't really have time to do anything about it. And almost without thinking about it, when it finally got to be the end of the day and I sat down in bed, this huge wave of emotion just hit me. And I'm sure we've all been there. You hit bed and suddenly like the tears start coming, or you just really feel it fall down on you. And that's because you finally stopped moving long enough to sit with your emotions. And it can become a real natural human reaction to want to kind of just push those aside. Like, I'll just go to bed. Like, I'm so tired, I'll deal with it in the morning. But what we know is that doesn't help. If you at the end of a day where you've experienced a lot or you felt a lot, which a lot of us are right now, especially if you're quarantining with other people and everyone's kind of getting on each other's nerves, if we just push it aside, then the next day we wake up with those same problems and those feelings. So there's a great value to just, before you write in your journal, just sit for a few minutes and really lean into how you felt that day. Think about if there were any points where you felt really, really good, or whether you felt, a really difficult emotion like anxiety or stress or, whatever that might be. And just kind of let yourself feel it. Sometimes people will call this like finding the edge, where like, let's say that you had a really emotional moment during the day. For example, let's say you got in an argument with a friend because tensions are kind of high and you got in a fight and it's the end of the day and you've moved on, but you still kind of feel that in the back of your head, that really bothered me. Let yourself go there for a second. Let yourself feel whatever it was that you felt, the anger, the sadness, the anxiety. That's okay. It's okay to feel that, because if we don't feel it and lean into it and deal with it, it's just going to come back up the next time we think about it or the next time we talk to that person. So let yourself kind of feel it, before you start writing anything down, just kind of mentally recap your day, walk through the motions, how do you feel? So for that day that I was talking about, it might be thinking about, gosh, I was so anxious. I almost cried on a Zoom call or on a live presentation, or, it really, bothered or upset me that somebody delivered me that kind of really personal or hard news about a family or friend in the middle of me doing all that, and it upset me. Let yourself think about it. And then we go into the next stage, which is kind of what I call the acceptance stage. And this is where you kind of just let the feelings be. And in a perfect world, we would be able to use this moment to take something from it. So for example, there's nothing that day that I was so anxious that I was almost, in tears. There's a lot of that I can't do anything about. There's a lot going on right now. There's a lot of people we're trying to help. The schedules are really busy. I can't change that. But what I can do is maybe communicate in the morning to my family or friends and say, hey, listen, guys, I have a really, really busy day. So if you need to talk to me about something and it can wait, can we just wait until the end of the day? Or maybe I go back to my colleagues and say, I'm feeling a little bit overloaded. So there's parts of it I can't change, and then there are some things that I can take away with it. So my acceptance might just be sitting there, and we'll go through kind of a breathing exercise you can do while this is happening. My acceptance might just be sitting there and thinking, okay, you know what? There are parts of this I'm just going to have to let go of or be okay with, because there's nothing I can do to change what's happening in the larger world right now. But then there are a couple of lessons I can take away from this. I find myself feeling the same thing every time I commit to more than I can actually do. So how can I change that? And so just taking a minute to kind of breathe, those feelings you just kind of thought about and leaned into, let them kind of be. If there's something to take from it, take it from it. Sometimes there's nothing we can take from it in the moment, and that's okay. Just kind of saying to ourselves, like, this happened, I got emotional, it's okay. It might happen again, but at least I kind of thought about it and accepted it and sat with it instead of just going to bed or diving right into my journal and not dealing with it. Then the next piece of it is actually writing in your journal. And this is where you have a lot of freedom to do whatever you want. What I would encourage you to do is capture any kind of like high and low feelings that you had for that day, anything that happened that felt really significant to you, anything that you did for another person that made you feel good, anything somebody did for you that made you feel good, and just kind of capturing whatever is important to you to remember or hold on to as you go into the next day, or any feelings that you need to process. So for me, on that day where I was overbooked and super anxious and dealing with the personal and professional issues at the same time, I might write that down, like, crazy busy day. I had this call, I had this meeting, I had this live presentation. I felt really, really anxious and didn't feel like I had time between things to really, calm down. I'm continuing to have problems with, feeling like I have to take care of everyone else. Whatever those things are and how you felt, capture those and write them down. And then after you've done that, whatever your journal entry is, and if you want to include things that inspired you or quotes, whatever it is that you want to put in your journal, put in that piece. Then I like to take a second and capture anything there is for me to take away from that day. So if there's a lesson to be learned, like, I really can't let myself, be that booked, or I really need to make sure that I build in 5 to 10 minutes between things that I'm doing, whether that for you is classes or homework assignments or Zoom calls with friends or work, whatever it is, to breathe, take it away. Or maybe the takeaway is not that clear. Maybe the takeaway, the thing you want to remember and the thing you want to remind yourself of tomorrow is simply that you can do this. You've done this every single day for the 50 days that we've been doing this, so you can do it. But just some sort of learning or acceptance or piece you can take from it. And then I always like to end with a gratitude list. And Gratitude lists, I think, always feel a little silly when you first start doing them. Sitting down every day, even if you don't feel like it, and saying, I'm going to write down 3 to 5 things that I'm grateful for. And we did like a gratitude wall exercise here. I think there are still some of them there. They say puppies and cereal. So the other thing too is a gratitude list doesn't necessarily have to be these big, huge things. Sometimes, especially during tough times, it's really little things that get us through. I'm not allowed to have cereal in the house now because I ate 74 boxes of it in the first 2 weeks of quarantine. But I am grateful for it, and I will get it again if I need it. But there's so much data that says, and science and research that big universities and really, really kind of skilled professionals have done that show just taking a few minutes to write down things that we're grateful for at the end of the day has this tremendous impact on our emotional health. And so I always end my journal exercises with that. And then I also, and I'll make a note here real quick, that between me explaining this process that we're going through and us actually going through it, we're going to do a beat for questions. So if you have any questions about what we've talked about, this process of thinking about your emotions, leaning into them, thinking about ways you can accept them or things that you can learn from them, writing in your journal, capturing any lessons you've learned, and doing your gratitude list. If you have any questions about that, go ahead and start submitting them, because we'll take a break and answer them before we move into the actual exercise. But what I like to do is I end each day by doing my journal exercise, which ends with the lessons I've learned or the things that I want to remember in my gratitude list. And I start each day by looking at that part of my journal entry from the day before. And I find that to be a really powerful way to start the day, remembering that no matter how challenging things are, no matter how many things suck right now, there are some good things that I can really be appreciative for. And there's some stuff I learned yesterday, last week, last month, that's going to help make this a little bit easier tomorrow and the next day. So that is kind of the overview of the process. And then after we see if there are any questions, and answer those, we're actually going to kind of grab our journals and our pens or pencils and walk through an exercise together. So did we have any questions come in? I don't think so. Cool. Okay. Oh, no questions. Cool. So we're going to kind of dive into the actual exercise part of it. So the first thing that we're going to do, and while we're doing this, we're just going to play music for a couple of minutes so that you can have time to kind of go through this process. And obviously it's not the end of the day right now, but feel free to think about today, if there are things that have happened today that have caused you to feel big things, whether they're positive or negative, or maybe you're going to think about yesterday or this past week, whatever you want to. But during this time, I just want you to sit. We're going to play kind of some calming music and just think about what are the things that have happened that caused a reaction in me. What are the things that happened that I feel like are important, and what are the things that happened that I really want to remember and appreciate, especially in this time where I think for a lot of us, every day kind of runs together and it's hard to tell one day from the next. What are the things you want to remember? So we'll just kind of put the clock on for about 3 minutes here, and we're just going to play some music and just kind of sit with it and think about whatever it is that's on your mind, and let yourself feel it. If it's upsetting, if it makes you a little bit emotional, that's okay, but just let yourself feel it for about 3 minutes, and we're going to start that now. Okay, I think we can turn down the music now and move on. Um, Kind of what I'll do at the end of each of the sections of walking through the routine is just share a little of my experience and what I was thinking of and what I'm doing, and hopefully that can help um, as you go through your process. And one of the things that I was thinking of is I think a lot of us that are on here are probably in LA, and a couple of days ago they announced that most likely our stay-at-home order was going to exist in some point through July, which is obviously a big change. And when I first heard it, I kind of was one of those days I just described where I was so busy I couldn't think about it. And I think that just last night and today, my mind just really started processing what that means. The things that I was looking forward to that are probably going to be canceled, some trips, and I've already had some canceled, some trips that are going to have to be canceled. And I think one of the things that happens with me, and I've heard other people say this too, is when I feel that disappointment, I also feel a little guilty because, like, is my canceled trip really that big of a deal when there are people who are sick, and there are people that have lost their jobs and are struggling in so many ways. And I know from the work I do and from the experts I talk to that disappointment is disappointment, and you're allowed to feel it. So, but even knowing that, that's hard for me. So that was really one of the things that I was thinking about, is that I'm just really beginning to process what that means for me. And it makes me think about any of the challenges that we've had so far, and wonder a little bit about what that's going to feel like doing it for a little bit longer. So that's kind of what I was thinking during that moment when I was leaning into my feelings. And so then the next thing that we would do is I like to do just a little breathing exercise, and we're going to do it. And it might feel a little silly, especially led by a guy who's wearing a Harry Potter onesie with purple hair. But I promise you, there is data. Breathing is so powerful, especially when we're thinking about or processing something that's difficult, when we need to kind of stay present in our minds, and it just does wonders. So today, while we do this kind of processing or acceptance step, we're just going to do a box breath. And I'm going to explain what that is because I'm not good at talking while I do it. But to do a box breath, you're simply going to breathe in through your nose fairly deeply for 4 counts. And then you're going to hold it for 4 counts. And then you're going to exhale through your mouth fully for 4 counts. Hold another 4 counts and do it again. So before I kind of talk you through the exercise that goes with this breathing exercise, let's just do it a couple of times, because I think that it's helpful, especially after we've just kind of thought about some feelings or situations that might be tough. So let's start by breathing in through our nose for 4 counts. We're going to hold that for 4. We're going to exhale completely for 4. We're going to hold 2, 3, 4. Inhale for 4. Hold that. Exhale completely. And then you just kind of repeat. But what I want you to do this next time that we're going to go through it, and a technique that works well for me and that I've heard works for other people, is when you're holding your breath, I want you to kind of say to yourself like an affirmation or something that kind of helped with the feelings that you just went through. And so for me, for example, there's not much I can do about the fact that the stay orders continued until July. So there's a piece of it where I just need to remind myself that it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. There are a lot of other people going through the same thing. We've managed to all get up through this to this point together. We don't know for sure what it's going to look like. things might change more back to normal before we think they are, whatever it might be. So my one mantra when I'm holding in is going to be, this is going to be okay. We're all getting through this together. And then kind of my lesson or my takeaway from a lot of the anxiety that I was talking about feeling really does have to do with setting realistic expectations about what I can get done and not putting so much pressure on myself and being compassionate with myself, because this is a really trying situation. So my kind of mantras when I'm holding and releasing when I'm holding my breath at the top and the bottom of this exercise are going to be, it's okay, we're in this together. And you can set boundaries, be compassionate with yourself. And so when we go through this again, I just want you to kind of think about those things that you can kind of accept or take away from the feelings that we just thought about in the first exercise. So we're just going to do 3 or 4 rounds of this. I won't count you all the way through it. It's pretty simple, but just taking a minute to breathe and think about those thoughts of acceptance or the things that you can learn or take away from what you've been thinking about. Okay, so we're just going to do that for a second. Breathe in for 4, 2, 3, 4. And just keep going with that. Just knowing that whatever you're feeling, whatever the feelings or the situations you thought about, they're manageable. You're going to get through it. Okay. And to be honest, when I'm doing this for myself, especially on days when it's really anxious, sometimes I'll do this for the combination of kind of the leaning into my feelings and kind of the processing or accepting or thinking about what I can take away from it. Sometimes that'll last 3 minutes, sometimes it'll last 10 minutes. Just take the time that you need. The reason I wanted to do this exercise before we actually start writing in our journal is I think that sometimes, just because a lot of times when we do have to write things for school or for work, it is an assignment, there is a pressure to kind of get it right. I find that if I jump straight into writing into my journal, sometimes I'm just focused on the writing part of it and I'm not really doing the thinking part of it and leaning into the feelings part of it. So after you've done this exercise, now is when we'll actually take our journals and take our pen and paper and actually go in and write a little bit about what we just thought about. And I think I'll actually just kind of combine these 2 steps together into one little 4 or 5 minute segment. Write kind of what you were feeling, the important things you feel like you need to put down on paper, whether it be feelings or situations, and then write down a little bit about how you're accepting that or how you can feel okay with that or something that you can take away from that, a lesson that you've learned. So let's just do that. Open your journal. If you don't have a journal, just grab a sheet of paper and just start kind of writing that. And so we're going to play the music again and take, 4 minutes just to kind of write in our journals, to actually write down our thoughts and feelings and what we want to remember about them. Okay, we'll start now. very dramatic bop of my head up. Okay, I think we can stop from now to move on to the next part of the exercise. But obviously, in your day-to-day routine, this is the part that's probably going to fluctuate. How much time you spend and how much focus you have to do this will probably change just based on how you're feeling. And journaling does not work as well if we start judging ourselves or critiquing ourselves of like, oh, you didn't write enough, or you need to write more, or we look at what we wrote and somebody had made the comment about how important it is that we don't self-edit, that we look at it and don't look at it and go, God, this is too much negativity. Like, that is not what this is about. This is about capturing what's on your mind on a piece of paper, not judging yourself for it, not having an expectation of what it looks like, and being okay with the fact that it is what it is. And so I just want to, point that out, that if you find yourself having that kind of like homework or work project mentality about this, be more compassionate with yourself, especially in these current situations. Because there are days when, quite honestly, I open my journal and it's all I can do to put down 2 things I'm grateful for. But at least I opened my journal and I wrote something down and I made it part of my routine, because that's what keeps us coming back to it. Before we move to the gratitude, I want to make one other point too, because one of the mistakes that I'll find myself, or not mistake, but one of the unproductive things that I'll find myself doing is in the part where you kind of write your takeaways or your lessons learned, I'll put something like, don't let stuff you hear on the news about COVID or staying at home get to you so much. And there's a part of that I can't control. And it's really, really important that we understand the difference between the things we can control and the things that we can't. We can't control if the fact that a news story that we see, or something that someone tells us, or something that we just run across on the internet causes an emotional reaction in us. We can't control that. That's not a good takeaway for me to tell myself to not react to those things. We can control what we do after we have that initial reaction, and we can take away and say, maybe tomorrow I don't turn on the news, but don't have takeaways that are unrealistic or that punish yourself. So don't have a takeaway that's like, a criticism of who you are. So that's really important. Make them things that are simple and actionable. Then the next part, which is my favorite part, is the gratitude part. And so for this one, we'll just take like a minute. We'll put on music for like a minute, but just really don't overthink this. What are 3 to 5 things that you're grateful for right now, today? And they can be anything. They can be that you finally found a puzzle in stock at Target. They can be that you got to get out of the house to drive or ride with somebody to go through the drive-through at Taco Bell. Whatever it is, it's fine. So we're just going to start the music for about a minute and then just write down 3 to 5 things that you're grateful for in your journal under everything that you just did. Okay, we'll start that now and play a little music. Hopefully that was enough time. for us to write down some things we're grateful for. I'll share mine real quick. We have some questions, so I'm going to do. Mine are silly today, but that's okay. Last night we were too lazy to cook, and I'd gotten a email for some offer from Olive Garden down the street. So we actually ordered Olive Garden pickup. And as I was filling out the order for them, it said special requests, and I just put I love breadsticks in the special requests. For those people that don't know, the breadsticks at Olive Garden are vegan. They're good. And they gave me a ton of breadsticks extra, and that meant I got to eat them last night and today too. And that I'm grateful for right now. I'm grateful, actually, this is the first time I've worked with We Rise LA, and I'm super grateful to get to know them and that they're providing this service to people, and that they let, not only their community, but they let also the Love is Louder community and our followers join in. It's something I've been looking forward to, and I'm grateful for that. I apologize if there are people in a part of the world where there's not sunshine, but there is sunshine here right now, and I'm super grateful for that because it does a lot to change my mood. And I'm not going to give viewing recommendations, but I started watching a couple of new series this week on Netflix, and I'm grateful for those because it's nice to be able to kind of just disconnect from your own mind and absorb yourself in a different world for just a few minutes. So those would be, mine. They might be this, except for the breadstick part, they might be very similar tomorrow, and that's fine. What's really, really important is that you just take time to do it. And something that really has helped me, and it's provided some structure and routine during this time, which you borrow, is if one of the things that I'm grateful for is a person or group of people, I will make a note, and first thing when I wake up the next day, I will do something about that to thank them. And so that could be as simple, I actually, believe it or not, did this morning. It could be as simple as sending an email to the manager at the restaurant that did something nice for you, or sending a note to a friend whose post inspired you or who reached out to you, and just let them know. And I just find that to be the most amazing way to start a day, even if you don't feel like waking up, even if the day seems intimidating. If you start your day by telling someone thank you for something they did the day or the week before that made you grateful, I have a really hard time being in a bad mood when I start that way. The other thing I want to say that's so important about this process is about leaning into our emotions and feeling with them. And sometimes they're bigger than this process is going to take care of. There are days when I go into my journal writing feeling really overwhelmed and emotional, and at the end of the journal writing, I still feel that way. I still feel unsettled. I still feel like I can't really sleep or focus, and that's okay. You just need to acknowledge that, and then there's other things that we can do. We can reach out to a friend. Sometimes I'll just text a friend and say, do you have 5 minutes to talk to me before we crash out? Reach out to a family member. I have a series of podcasts or different things that I have on my phone that I listen to when I'm feeling really overwhelmed, that are on different topics that calm me down. Or I'm sure they're offered through We Rise LA too, but if you go to loveislouder.org, you'll see that there are some text chat lines where you can text and talk to a counselor anytime. Just be aware that this helps manage our emotional health, but sometimes we need more than this, and that's okay. This is just kind of a stepping stone, and then you reach out to a friend, they help you feel better, and maybe the next day that's part of your journal entry, is what it felt like to connect to that friend, and maybe a takeaway is I'm going to do that more often, and then maybe that's part of your gratitude as well. I want to leave time for questions, so I'm just going to make a couple other tips or ideas that I know that come up a lot. A lot of people, when they're writing in their journal, especially if you're writing about how you're feeling and what's helped you feel better, want to share that with other people. So that I kind of move from journaling to storytelling. So storytelling is when we kind of share things external. And one note on that, never required. It's not the point of journaling. It is totally fine if you journal and you never share anything with anyone. But one thing I've noticed right now is that a lot of people have different opinions about the way we should be doing things and the way we should be kind of living our lives right now. And there's some people that say, hey, we should be going back out into the world. And they have reasons that they think that, whether you agree with them or not. And some people are saying we should really stay in. And what I see a lot happening on social media, instead of storytelling, we're bickering. So instead of saying, hey, I really thought about it and I looked at the news sources or the information that I think are reliable, and here's what I've decided to do and why, we start attacking what other people are thinking or doing. And I think one really great output of our journaling, because maybe the things we will journal about is how you feel about these things. It is so much more powerful to share our story in our voice and help people understand what we're doing and why we're doing it than it is to attack what other people are doing. And I use a quick example of this is that I grew up in a very, very small conservative town. My dad was a Southern Baptist minister. I'm gay. Obviously, where I'm from is not, a lot of people where I'm from are not supportive of me and my life and my family. And I could defriend all those people. I could rail in their comments anytime they post anything that's against my disagreement, but I've chosen not to do that. I've chosen instead to use my social media to tell my story, how I feel, how I live my life, my family, and what's important to me. And what I've found over the years is that I will frequently just get messages from people that I grew up with on social media that say, hey, I just wanted you to know I'm so happy for you and I'm happy for your family. And to me, that's a sign that they've just been watching. I haven't been fighting with them. I haven't been putting down their opinions. I haven't been pushing them. I've just been telling my story, and that impacted them. So I encourage you, especially during these times when there are a lot of people that probably need support, if you're comfortable, um, find a way to share pieces of your story, maybe not super personal stuff, because you want to be careful putting too much out in the public sphere if your social media is open, but things that are working for you. And one opportunity to do that is Love is Louder has an action center at loveislouder.org right now, and we're encouraging people to share things that are making them feel calm, kind, active, and connected right now. So if you have ideas or things that you want to share that come to your head or come out of your journaling process, post that on social media, and tag us, and tag We Rise LA as well, so that we can both see that and share that little pieces of your story of what's working for you and what's helping you get through kind of the difficult times. And you can follow us on social media too at Love is Louder. We're going to be posting some more information about little ways to share your story in the next couple of days. But that's basically the process that I wanted to walk everyone through today, and remind you that you can kind of customize that. So let's answer a few questions before we wrap here, if those have come in. Yeah, I definitely think you can share the question is, can recording your thoughts on video bring similar results as journaling? They can, from the standpoint in that they help you express how you're feeling and they give you that kind of platform. I think the only challenge with video is I find that a lot of times when we're recording video, it's hard not to think about recording that video for someone else. And I don't know that that's the best first step. I think if you wanted to share a video of how you were feeling or what you had learned with people, I would recommend going through this process of thinking about it on your own and writing it down before you pick up, the video camera. But some people, we've really been talking here about using journaling to support your mental health and help us get through like tough times and tough days. Some people also journal because they want to be able to look back 5 years from now and see who they were and what they thought and like how they've grown. So putting something on video can be good for that. So you can definitely do it. I just think if when you're doing it, you find yourself thinking more about like who's going to see it and how you're going to appear, and you find yourself like starting it over because you messed up, then that would be kind of a signal that it's maybe not as personal or internal as experience as you need it to be, and maybe you still want to do the written journal first. The other thing that there is data that just shows writing things down has a certain power in us retaining kind of what we've learned, but also just it can be kind of calming in the same way that like coloring or doing anything with a tactile object can. So yeah, you can do it. It'll be similar results, but it really just depends on how it makes you feel. Another question? You can definitely pick a theme for your gratitude exercises. I generally will still do my normal. I just think there's something really powerful of just saying, okay, don't overthink it. What are the things you're grateful for today? But then I also think you can add to that and pick a theme and certain things that you want to dig into, especially if there's an area of your life that's being hard. So, like, let's say, for example, I've heard a lot of people saying they're having a hard time with family dynamics right now, either because maybe their family believes differently than they do about some of the stuff that's going on, or maybe you're quarantined with your family, and that can be. Listen, I love my dogs. I'm sick of my dogs. I've been quarantined so long. But and so that could be a good exercise if you find yourself only having negative thoughts about your interactions with your family, or you've had only negative thoughts about quarantining. Like, I've had to do this a couple of times where I'm like, okay, Courtney, write down things you're grateful for about this moment of staying inside. And they could be as simple as, I finally cleaned out that closet, or, I'm saving money because I'm not eating out. Whatever it is, I think you can choose a theme that's what you need. But then I'd also let yourself still just put whatever comes to mind. No, not at all. So the question is, does it have to be things that are sad and negative that we write down? I should have been more clear about this. I encourage you to celebrate the good stuff for sure. You want to remember those good things, because one of the things that you can do over time when you journal is start to recognize trends, right? So, for example, if I'm journaling every day and I find that every time I watch a certain news program, I find myself getting super anxious, or every time I have a phone call with a friend, I have a negative response. That lets us learn from that. The other is true too. We need to, especially during tough times, be really aware of the things that are bringing us joy. And I'll go back to the example of my silly little onesie walk I'm doing every day. I started doing it kind of as a little bit of a joke, like, I'm going to wear a onesie until this is over. But when I really started observing it, it started being kind of the best part of my day, because not only was it playful for me, not only was I getting out and walking around safely, but neighbors would wave from their windows and be like, you're a bird today, or you're a penguin today, or whatever it is. And it's important to capture those things that are bringing you joy, because in the same way that we want to try when we can to avoid or change the things that we know are upsetting us, that we can change, we want to embrace the things that are making us feel good. So yes, definitely right. The good stuff that happened to you too. This isn't at all just about negative emotions. Any other questions? Cool. So I want to end on a couple of things. One, just remembering that, like, this is purely the beginning of a routine that's built on kind of what we know has a powerful impact on our mental health. And I'm just going to kind of recap the most important things. Take a minute to let yourself feel what you felt that day, negative and positive. Just sit there with it. Do a little bit of a breathing exercise. We're going to be putting some other breathing exercises up online. I think there's some more at loveislouder.org, but the box breath, 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold is a good one. And while you're doing that breathing exercise, just kind of let the feelings be, accept them if there's something you can learn from. As you're beginning the journaling process, don't start self-editing your feelings. Don't think about, oh gosh, only bad crap is happening today, so I'm only gonna have bad stuff to write in my journal. Live your life, and then at the end of the day, do your journaling exercises and take from it what you need. And then also customize it to fit what you need it to be. If you're an artist, you're a writer, or you have ideas for films or drawings or shows, use your journal to include that. Another way I use a journal is a parking lot. I am really not good after like 6 or 7 p.m. at dealing with new problems that rise up. I usually start super early working. By 7, I'm fried. So what I'll do in my journal is, if something comes up that I need to deal with or think about that I don't have to deal with during that day, I'll just put it in my journal on the next day's page, just saying, like, think about this when you have a better ability to do so, when you're not as tired and you're more focused. So this is really a building block. Make it whatever you need it to be. You can follow us at Love is Louder, message us if you have more questions. Definitely go check out werise.la because there's a lot more workshops. They're all free. They're all accessible on your computer that you can participate in throughout May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I want to thank everybody who's here for participating. I want to thank We Rise LA and the full team at the Jed Foundation, which Love is Louder is part of, for supporting this. But I also just want to say to everyone who's doing whatever you need to do, whether you're an essential worker and you're going out and working, or you have parents or family members that are, or if you're just doing your darn best to stay home and stay safe, dealing with disappointment of stuff that's not going to happen. All of that is courageous. All of that is brave. It doesn't matter how you're impacted by COVID. We're all doing something. So be compassionate with yourself, celebrate that you're doing a good job, and write all that down in your journal. And look forward to seeing what you do, and hopefully you'll share some of what you're writing and experiencing if it feels comfortable and relevant through one of our campaigns. And have a good day.